We often think of nature as being something outside of us, rather than thinking of ourselves and feeling ourselves as part of nature. And when we look at indigenous people who are living more closely with nature, they are living much more in their bodies and experiencing the inner world of their bodies in a very different way than we tend to. And we tend to get disconnected from that very internal experience of the body. And we tend to get disconnected very early in life, so that we don't experience ourselves in an embodied relationship with nature. We therefore abstract ourselves with it and tend to be more cognitive in our relationship with nature. Well, modern medicine is based on modern science, which tends to be materialistic in its viewpoint. Modern science sees the material world as the fundamental basis of reality. So anything that cannot be reduced to a material understanding or can be measured tends to be regarded with suspicion by science. We're seeing some changes now with quantum physics. We're seeing some changes, and I think a new paradigm is developing. But at the moment, there's still this prejudice against the that which is non-material because it cannot be measured. Now, indigenous cultures who live very close to nature have a very different embodied experience of nature, in which they experience nature as being animated. Anima is the original word for the soul. We are animated by an incoming consciousness. And indigenous cultures very often welcome the soul in. They create the conditions to welcome the soul in. We don't in our culture, and this is one of the wounds that most of us carry deep in the core of who we are. We never really got welcomed in. I've been working with babies for more than 20 years now, and one of the things that I've really learnt from babies is how much they want to tell their story. Now, babies are not able to tell us in words, and so they will tell us through their body language. They will tell us through the way that they cry. And they will tell us something about their prenatal experience and their birth. We have mapped out these territories now with researchers going back more than 50 years, working with adults, working with babies and children, and identifying how these different stages will be expressed. And if we don't get to express them, there are parts of us that never get welcomed in. And if they don't get welcomed in, we don't integrate them into our experience. And so they tend to have a life within us, and they tend to hijack us at particular times of our life. For example, a birth theme may show up later on in a transition in life. It may be as simple as when I leave the house, or it may be a transition in relationship or job. We see prenatal umbilical themes arising in relationship, in our relationship with intimacy and with money and with food. These themes we see appear again and again. Whereas if our experience is heard and empathically understood, and babies do feel this, then babies express how it was and they are able to let go of it. But we need to listen. We need to learn to listen to the babies. And it's because these bits are not welcomed in, these bits of our experience, that we tend to cut off from our body. We tend to contract. We tend to withdraw from the body, withdraw from sensation, because it becomes a source of anxiety within us. So we cut off from our inner nature, which then cuts us off also from our relationship with nature outside. There's a deep human need to be heard, and I would even go further to say we need to be felt. And if we can empathically mirror back to babies their experience, they feel it. And what tends to happen is, like for any of us, when we tell our story and somebody is really listening, we tend to feel the story more. It tends to become amplified within us. So with babies, they will, through their body language and through the memory crying, show us exactly where in their prenatal experience or their birth they are still feeling stuck, or there's a sense of overwhelm from that experience they're still feeling. And it may be that the crying is angry, it may be sad or anxious. And by mirroring with our bodies, like if a baby's touching themselves here, it's like, oh, that hurts, ow, ow, ow. And trying to find the right pitch which mirrors the baby's experience, maybe the pitch of the baby's crying. You'll see that babies really begin to orient to you. They make a deep contact. They say, you get this. And they feel you get it. They really express it because you're listening. And what happens is the crying will tend to reach a release apex, which is a particular level of crying, and then that inner pressure, that inner tension relaxes. The baby lets it go, and the crying stops. Without that empathy, very often the crying will continue in cycles. Parents don't understand why the baby is crying. They're trying everything to meet the baby's needs. The baby feels on their own. The parents feel on their own. And the whole relationship there is fragmented. And in that fragmentation, that aloneness, again, we tend to lose relationship with our inner reality. We give up. What's the point in trying to tell my story if nobody is hearing it? The words maternal and material have the same root, and the material world is the world that we're born out of. Not into, actually, but out of. And the word indigenous means to be born within. And the indigenous experience all human beings have is to gestate in the mother, in the material world of the mother, the womb. And so how we experience that can directly influence how we experience nature. Do I feel welcome? How I feel welcomed in these woods maybe reflect how I felt welcomed in the womb. And then we also tend to act out what's happened to us. And very early in life, we are dominated. Our nature is dominated by cultural expectations that cut us off from our own nature. Such as, you're meant to be quiet. A good baby is a quiet baby. So to be expressive is to be wrong. So our nature gets diminished. So therefore we diminish nature. We may have rhythms of feeding imposed upon us, and that cuts us off from our own natural rhythms. All these early experiences where we haven't felt met, we tend to cut off from ourselves because there's an inner anxiety, and this inner anxiety we see projected out onto nature. We see it projected onto birth as well. Birth is a natural phenomenon, and this attempt to control birth all the time. When the body expresses physical symptoms, we tend to try to suppress them with medicines. We talk about a war against this illness or that illness, but these are all expressions of nature. So we don't work with nature from the very beginning. We therefore cut off from our embodied experience of nature. Now, when I sit in these woods, I am feeling in relationship with this beautiful place through my body. And the more work I've done to really be able to embody who I am, my true nature, the more I am able to feel the vibrancy, the aliveness of this place, which gives me a respect for it that I can't imagine having if I was cut off from my own embodied experience. I truly believe we need to create a type of ecology that includes our inner nature as well as outer nature. An attempt to conserve all that we can be, as well as conserve these woodlands, the natural habitats around us. Our inner nature is inherent. It's something we're born with. And it's these early experiences by which we get disconnected we need to take a look at and think carefully about. Because if we can create the conditions whereby parents are supported so that they can then support the child to really embody all that they can be, instead of the early disconnects, which later disconnect us from the external nature. If we can bring that type of support in, it will change the culture. The ecological issue is the biggest one we are faced with. At the moment, what I see is lacking is all emphasized out there, and the connection with our inner nature is not included within that. And so when I can be in nature with all of me, I feel a part of it. It's not something out there that I need to either save or dominate. It is me, and it is you.